it is happening. Wait for that and I shall mute that. Okay, I think we are on, yes. So we will get started. So the idea of this quick live stream is just to inform you of the apprenticeships that we deliver. So to give you a bit of background to us, first of all, we're not from a school background ourselves. We're not teachers, but my business, Rebecca Ray Coaching Consultancy, we've been delivering coaching and training within schools for the last 12 years within primary, secondaries, specials, PRUs. So we've got loads of experience working within schools. But I suppose our unique selling point, if you like, is that we see things a little differently. So that's why lots of schools have engaged with us over the years. We do a lot of work with schools in the West Midlands. I'm based in Warrington here in the Northwest. We've got a number of clients all over the UK. And we've got a number of clients who are already engaging in our leadership apprenticeships. We've delivered them now for the past 3 years with great success. And today we're going to be just focusing on the cohort that's due to come up next academic year. So with our team leader apprenticeship, which I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail in a moment, we have kind of several intakes, and our next intake where we're going to be open to new learners is going to be October. So we'll be looking to sign people up in September and then they'd start learning in October, and that's for a 12-month course. So that would take them through obviously until October of the following academic year where they would finish. So you'll see on the screen here, it says joinmenti.com. So Susie, who's on the call now, if you wouldn't mind joining menti.com, following that link, and then you can pop a code in 2715966. You can use that code then to be able to answer some questions as we go through. So as I mentioned just before we started the live stream, we are recording this to YouTube so that we can share it with other clients. So you may well be watching this live with us now, or you may also be watching it on a recording, either of which is absolutely fine. So I'll give you a bit more of an idea. If you're on the call live, if you wouldn't mind answering this first question, that would be fantastic. So if you visit menti.com and pop in that code. Now, if I think about a lot of the clients that I've been talking to recently, there's a real mixture around apprenticeship use in schools. Sometimes schools are using the apprenticeship levy for sports apprentices. That seems to be quite a common use. But actually, very few of my clients and new clients that I'm talking to are utilising leadership apprenticeships. So that's why we're trying to get the word out, really, that there's a really brilliant way of utilising the apprenticeship levy if you're already a levy payer, or accessing some of the funding if you're not, and I'll come on to that in a moment. So as I mentioned, we deliver 2 leadership apprenticeships. We deliver the level 5 in operations and department manager apprenticeship, and that's more appropriate for a senior leader. Now, if you're a multi-academy trust, these apprenticeships work brilliantly for central teams. So Beck and I have got a number of people who are central MAT teams. So I've had a strategic leader for IT, I've got a strategic leader for procurement, I've got a health and safety leader, all on those level 5, and then equally on the level 3 that we're going to be deep diving into today, we've got people like regional site managers, we've got a finance manager that's looking at going on the next cohort. So really the team leader is about first line managers. So if somebody's not managed people before, this is the perfect course for them. If they're more senior and perhaps leading a department and a larger team and working at a more strategic level, it's the level 5. So if the level 5's of interest, we won't be starting that probably until after Christmas, but you can certainly contact me directly and I can give you some more information on that, so it'll help you with your planning. But as I mentioned, we will talk a little bit more today about the team leader course in particular. So what would be really useful would be to hear from you as to what you're looking for from today's live stream. So if you're on the call today and if you've got any particular questions, particular areas that you'd like to explore, please feel free on Menti now to enter in some of those questions and I'll respond to those. Certainly some of the key things that have come up, and Beck and I were just chatting, we get to meet quite a lot of people in business and in schools who haven't come across the leadership apprenticeships before. And some of the key questions that come through are often around how much time it will take the person, the student, the learner to complete the course. So if I give you a bit of an idea of that now, so the team leader course that we're going to be looking at in more detail today, as I mentioned earlier, that's a 12-month programme. And there is activity that happens every month. And as part of the government funding that we receive to deliver the apprenticeship, we have to see each learner every 4 weeks as a minimum. So we ensure that there's some sort of activity happening every single month. And Beck's going to talk to you a little bit more what that looks like. But usually every month there'll be some sort of training session or coaching session or both, dependent on what's happening that month. So to give you a bit of an idea, when we start off the programme, we do a full face-to-face day, and we'll also do some smaller group coaching sessions just to see how they've got on, how they're finding it, how they're settling in. Some months, maybe over the summer holidays, for example, we set some work and we'll try and do a one-to-one if that person's available. So we're really flexible. We understand the school kind of timetables and things, so we try and work around you as much as possible, but the dates are set. So what we can do is we can pop that in the chat afterwards, and if you're watching this as a recording, you can request the overview with regards to the dates, when the program starts, when the specific modules are delivered. We've got all of those planned out. Some sessions are virtual and some sessions are face-to-face. I must say the majority is virtual, but we do drop in a couple of face-to-face throughout the programme just to offer that different dimension. Feedback from our cohorts has been that they love virtual, it's really convenient, but they really miss the face-to-face and they get a lot from that as well. So we try and offer that blended option. So that's how we go about delivering the training. We do training sessions as a group. So a lot of apprenticeships used to be delivered on a one-to-one. That's where we are a little different. We do it as a training programme. So another benefit, and this is some feedback that we've had from this year's cohort, is that it's also a great networking opportunity. So there will be people that are teaching and non-teaching, and I mentioned some of the roles earlier, but we also have phase leaders, subject leaders, year group leaders on this cohort. So we do have teaching staff and non-teaching staff. You might be wondering why teaching staff might go on a course like this instead of an MPQ. I think the reason is this is a much more practical programme. So it will give the learner on the leadership apprenticeship the core skills to lead people, to lead a team, to develop a team. Whereas an MPQ, you're not spending as much time on those core skills, and we'll talk you through shortly on the core skills that we cover. But for example, things like management of self, organising yourself is one of the key learns that people get out of this programme, balancing study and work at the same time, and we aim to give them the tools to do that. The other thing that often comes up from people looking to understand a little bit more about apprenticeships, if you've not done apprenticeships before, it is a little bit different in the fact that because it's government funding, there are set criteria that we need to follow. So I mentioned earlier that we need to see the learner every 4 weeks, so that's a requirement. It's also a requirement that we see the employer every 12 weeks. Now, this can be a virtual call, it can be a phone call, it can be a 5-minute call. The benefit of the employer call, really, so it's usually with the line manager of the person, it's really just to update them on how that learner's getting on, to hear some feedback from what it's like at the coalface, making sure that what we're seeing in the learning sessions is also what's happening back at work, and also just to identify any gaps, any development areas that together we can work on. So that works really, really well. So we need to do that every 12 weeks or so. And one of the other criteria that, to be honest, is seen as one of the more difficult challenges is something called off the job. Now, what off the job is, any apprenticeship within England has an off-the-job requirement, and this is where any learner has to record any learning that they're doing that contributes to the apprenticeship, and that needs to be 20% of their working hours. However, what often organisations do is they panic and think, my goodness, I can't afford for my staff member to be away from work for 20% of the time. That isn't the case, so don't worry. Yes, the things that they're doing with us count towards that 20%. So whenever they're in a training session or in a one-to-one with us, absolutely that all counts. But actually, whenever they're practicing whatever we've talked about in their job also counts. So in the communication module, for example, we cover chairing a meeting. So when they're in practice chairing a meeting and getting feedback, perhaps, that all counts to that those off-the-job hours. When they're practicing recruitment or doing one-to-ones following some of the work we've done with them, that all counts towards the off-the-job. So we encourage all of our learners at the end of a week just to jot down all of the hours that they've done, and we then report that on a monthly basis. So that's really important that the employer, and many of you will be joining here as an employer rather than as a learner, that as an employer you understand that there is a requirement that learners come to the training sessions, come to any coaching sessions. Those dates that are there are mandatory. Of course, people will be sick and we will work around that, but wherever possible, they absolutely should attend all of the sessions and then ensure that they're getting time to practice what they're doing. So what's really good about the apprenticeships is they are covered through knowledge, skills and behaviours. So we will cover all of the knowledge criteria that is required for the learner to know at the end. And we will also then kind of scaffold opportunities for them to practice. So as I mentioned, chairing a meeting would be a skill, for example, that would be required for them to practice. Giving somebody feedback would be a skill that they'd need to practice. Using different forms of communication would be a skill. And then there's also a set of behaviours like being open and honest and working within their organisation's values. So we've got a really clever platform that's all set up whereby the learners will access the work they've got to do to contribute to those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So they'd essentially come along to training sessions. They then have tasks that are set that they need to do in between the training sessions and before the next one. And all of that work then contributes to kind of ticking off those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So let's have a little bit more of a look at the team leader apprenticeship in particular. So this particular apprenticeship is about equivalent to an A level, whereas the higher level, the operations and department level, that's a level 5. So that's about a foundation degree level. So this level 3 is about equivalent to an A level. It's appropriate for first line managers. So if you've got people that are new to management and leadership, perhaps you're a multi-academy trust that has now started to build that central team. And often we find with those non-teacher leaders, they've worked their way up and doing a great job, but they don't have those formal qualifications in leadership or management. So that's where this is a really great opportunity to get a formal qualification, which is transferable wherever they go. It's recognised wherever they go. So I've mentioned a couple of different roles. So consider people like pastoral leaders. We've had some pastoral leaders look at joining the team leader apprenticeship. We've had quite a high number of office managers and leaders join, be that central team or office managers within specific schools. As I mentioned, we've had quite a lot of central MAT staff join, and we've also had teacher leaders as well. So it's very relevant for everybody. The leadership criteria is broad enough that it works really well for all leaders within schools. So Beck, I'm going to let you tell everybody a little bit more about the modules and the content, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So one of the first modules that we tend to cover is managing of self. And the reason we put this first is because we think it's really, really important to work on those skills around managing your workload and being able to delegate work effectively and safeguard the time that you have to spend on developing yourself and doing that work for the apprenticeship. So it sort of lays the groundwork for doing the work throughout the rest of the 12 months and removing the barriers that we perceive are there in terms of our time management, which can be a bit overwhelming at first to get your head around. We'll then look at team building and development, and this is where we really look at the differences between your role as a manager and your role as a leader. But we start off with some self-awareness. We look at ourselves, what we know about ourselves and what we know we need to develop about ourselves, as well as our strengths and how we use them really, really well in our teams. As part of this, there are certain models that we will come to understand and come to be able to talk about really fluently when it comes to leading a team, to recognizing the level of support that our team needs, to recognizing the sort of approach we need to take with them, be it more of a coaching approach, be it more of a dominant approach whereby we need to enable our teams to work to strict guidelines. So whatever your role is and whatever the situation is, it can be quite different. And then also being able to recognise our teams in terms of their development as a group. Where are they right now? What do they need for us? And how can we move through the more challenging areas of team development, but in a really, really healthy and constructive way? So we help develop the skills in terms of that around things like communication, around things like emotional intelligence, and also understanding the motivations of our teams. A big part of the apprenticeship is around doing a project. One of our modules is around project management. So before you're even enrolled on the course, we will talk about this and we'll have discussions around the sorts of projects you can do within your role that will help which will be a positive contribution to your business and help move it forward. So it's not additional work. We don't give additional work just for the sake of ticking boxes. What we do is look at your role and we look at what's really, really relevant to you and what can help you be really, really productive and to benefit the business as well. And what that does, it's a really rich piece of evidence which enables you to practice skills from across all of the modules. So it's really, really useful way to practice those skills. Communication is a big one. And as you can see, it overlaps all of the other modules, but we do look at communication in its own right because it's a key skill to be able to master, but also to understand where we are in terms of our own communication, to be able to adapt our communication and also recognize when we need to change it in order to fit different situations. So I'm thinking about things like presenting, things like chairing a meeting. We'll then look at organisation and governance. So governance within the workplace, compliance, policies, rules and regulations, legislation, it's a big part of the way that we work, especially in education settings. So we need to understand the importance of it, but how we bring it into our roles every day in order to work well with our teams and get them to understand this and make sure that we're applying them in a way that we can still motivate people, because it can come across as quite a boring, dry subject, but actually we try and weave that into the way that we interact with people, the way that we drive our businesses forward and our teams forward. And that's very much linked into the culture and the structure of the business. Understanding how our businesses are structured is the first place to start, because then we can understand the culture of it, how we drive that culture forward, but also how we can help influence that culture and think about the sort of culture we want to have within our workplace. We consider the things like our values within work and how important they are, and how we actually display those behaviours that Rebecca spoke about before, in terms of how we perform, how we interact, how we communicate with people. And then finally, we look at problem solving and data analysis. So this is really about how we overcome those difficult situations within the workplace. Maybe it's about making a decision, making some choices, which can have quite a bit of pressure on us when we've got a decision to make. Maybe it's about managing our teams through periods of change as well. And then also the data analysis, recognizing how much data actually plays a part in our roles, and especially in education, that can really influence our decisions. And we have got to take that into account, as well as the people management side of it. So we cover those modules, like Rebecca said, over a 12-month period, but what we do is we layer it on and we overlap and we keep coming back to, and we weave more information into it so that we're able to bounce between the different subject matter and be able to find those links really well between them and be able to talk confidently about all of those topics.
Amazing, thanks, Beck. So that's give you a bit of an idea of the content, and as I said, I'll aim to pop the overview in the chat at the end in a few moments. And then if you're watching this on a recording, please feel free to contact us and we'll give you a little bit more information on it. So just to touch on the apprenticeship levy before we close. So if you're an apprenticeship levy payer, there's a really easy click of a button basically that you can do to enable you to work with us and Northern Training Academy. It's very, very simple. If you're not a levy payer, there is still funding available. So you can access 95% funding. So we can talk you through all of that. If you're unsure if you're a levy payer or not, or if you know you're not and you want to find out how much courses will cost, do let us know and we can talk you through that, no problem. So with any accredited qualification, of course, there is some red tape. There's a final assessment to ensure that everybody's working at the level that they need to. So within this particular apprenticeship, there's two methods of assessment. The first one is, and Beck used the word evidence earlier, the learners will be collecting evidence through the tasks that we set them throughout that 12-month period. And then what they'll do with that evidence is they'll talk that through with an assessor in a professional discussion. So they'll talk about their learning from that 12 months. That's the first method of assessment. And the second one is a presentation. So they'll be given a presentation title, and then they'll be given 12 weeks to formulate a presentation, and then time to practice, and then they'll deliver that to the assessor as well, and they can get a pass or they can get a distinction. And we work really hard with all of our learners to give them the best opportunities to get distinctions. All of our learners that have gone through EPA have passed, and some have got distinctions as well, so we're really proud of that. One of the final things, just to let you know, with any apprenticeships that are in England, part of the funding states that any apprenticeship has to include functional skills. So what that means is any learner looking to go through endpoint assessment has to have English and maths at GCSE A to C or equivalent. If a lot of the time learners come with those certificates already, so they just need to provide proof of those certificates, so they then don't need to do anything else. If learners don't have those certificates, it's a great opportunity to get their English and maths. That's weaved in. Fabulous Northern Training Academy colleague Bev would work directly with the learner to support them, to enable them to get their English and maths, and that would need to be completed before they got to their endpoint assessment. Now, that is the end of our kind of presentation, if you like. So I just wondered if anybody's got any questions. Are there any questions from anybody on the call that we've not answered yet? I'll take that silence as a no. I'm going to stop the live stream